Hello and welcome to BonkTable. I'm Mass, and today with me is my wonderful co-host Cassandra.
Hi.
You know what's weird, Cassandra?
Hmm.
I actually do the arm motion to present you, even though I'm in my own home and you're in your own home every time.
What direction did you point in relative to yourself?
To the left of me.
That makes sense to me in a way I can't really define.
So for our wonderful viewers today, this will have a visual element to it. So if you're listening to podcast format, we will be having...
You're fucked. You're finished.
Yeah, that too. But we are going to be talking about our Conquest Vive faction tier list. However, we're going to get into our Parabellum news. So Parabellum kind of just has one-player bundles on their eShop.
They're good deals if you need one.
Yeah. That's we've kind of talked about everything else on here. It's just the bundles are new.
Yeah, I mean, they're good, but I wish wasn't as far along in collecting the factions that I collect at this point, because two of them have great bundles, but they're a tremendous value to people who are new to it, but I'm really, I would like it to be a great deal for me right now.
For what you're saying.
Is all I'm saying. Yeah. So if you're for some reason listening to this and you don't already have an army and play the game, this I would say is such a great way to get started that you'd be foolish not to take advantage of it.
Or if you want to either start Spires, Nords, or Radroon, because those are the current bundles.
Yeah. As long as it's one of those factions.
I'm trying to open this up. This is always slow, but it looks like you get a one-player starter box from Spires, and
then the 5th anniversary starter. So
shit, that's actually good.
Yeah, they're crazy.
For $259 American?
Yeah.
Or European? So, you know what? If you're European, convert your money into American and just buy this cheaper. That's what you should do.
Do complicated arbitrage to save some money.
Yeah, that anniversary box is actually super good. 2 units of Avatara with Centaur and Incarnates and a Lineage Highborn, and then followed up by a High Clone Executor Warband. Yeah, no, this is stuff you want as a Spires player.
Yeah. On second thought, don't buy the Spires one.
No, if you want to start Spires or need more of those things, this is a great deal. Nords, what are you getting? Fenris Beast Pack, a Blooded, MSU Trolls, Ogre, and Stalkers, all really good. And then
my brother in EA, you're not just getting one unit of Fenrir Beast Pack.
Oh, double Fenris Beast Pack, double Ogre, and Vognilor. Yeah. Oh, okay, this is actually really good.
It offsets the fact that you'd be getting your third Mountain Jotnar in this scenario. Which is honestly it's not to editorialize too much, but I think that's the biggest hit in the Nord box is just
Mountain Jotnar.
If you don't have a mount, either you have a Mountain Jotnar or you don't need one that bad.
How many? Okay, so as a 100k player, how many House of Knights do you think I own in various states of new in box, built and primed, and fully painted? How many House of Knights do you think I own? Well,
I overheard the number the other day, so I don't want to cheat.
Okay, well, you could just say the number and make me feel bad.
I don't really remember either. So it was 31 or something?
It is 31 House of Knights.
Hell yeah.
It's the same thing as House of Knights to Mountain Jotnars. If you're a Norse player, you're collecting Mountain Jotnars. If you're a 100k player, you're just collecting House of Knights. You can't get rid of them.
And if you're a Wadroon player, perfect segue, it's Predators.
It's Predators. Yeah,
I have 6 Predator models. I could almost field a regiment of Predators.
Are those slingers or hunters in that first box?
I think that's a dual kit, baby, so it's whatever you want.
Really? He only has one medium? Well, that's rough. Thank goodness you have the 5th anniversary box. What's running Chieftain, Thunder Riders, more more Raptors, but you also get Veterans and more Blooded. Yeah, so he really balances that out. So those two boxes combined. These are actually really good deals.
Even then, Wadroon has some heavy caveats, but I feel like that's a lot of the subject of this episode. So I don't want to, pop that off too early. But it's a lot of lights. and a lot of the bulk of that, like Raptors, as I think everyone knows, are not necessarily the powerhouse that they once were.
Yeah.
So in that respect, like I would almost say that probably even after the amount of shit I talked to Mountain Yachtnars, this is probably, hate to say it, but at the current state of the game, the weakest overall box. Although it's all stuff that I was really excited to buy when I got it. It's just things happen.
Yeah, I think like it's still a good set of stuff. Like I think you still want all these minis.
Yeah, if you're new to it.
Yeah, like these are very much, you are swapping factions or you're new to the game. I would recommend these boxes if this is a faction you want to get into. You're not going to have a feels bad purchase with these.
No.
That's kind of what I really feel with that.
And the worst one just needs, like, it needs an update that we know is coming. So I'm just saying that based on current things like Thunder Riders, Raptor Riders, but they were once good, and those days might return.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I tried to scroll your window. That's funny. Can you scroll down just a bit? I just saw something that was interesting to me.
Oh my god!
Just a little more. The Savage. Okay, that's cool. I was just wondering what that model was.
With the poopy rock man? He's like trying to take a dump. Leave him alone. Don't look at him. He just looks like he's trying to like.
Depends on who's paying who.
Yeah. Ooh, what's that? Ooh, what's that? Ooh, what's that? Okay, this is actually kind of fun. I need to get out of here. Yeah. Should we get on? Let's get on to the tier list.
Yeah, I suppose we should.
Okay, so we didn't really talk much about what this was going to be based off of. We're going to do our vibe-based tier list. So should we talk about our criteria now and just kind of make it up as we go, what we feel?
Yeah, I mean, we should lay some kind of ground rules because we're really going into this with no pre-planning whatsoever.
No.
So,
do you want to go first, or you want me to be reasonable with my explanation? You could just go off the walls. Actually, you know what? You should go off the walls so I can ground us.
I think you're going to be shocked perhaps by my, well, I don't know. Who knows?
Maybe
so what I'm thinking is, like, I think the vibe is, it transcends any single aspect of the factions. So not only are we looking at the how they're doing in the game right now, but the fluff aspects of it.
Oh, is that the Can I copy this tier list and we could do a lore one after?
Yeah.
Okay, I might just see if I can copy this.
Yeah, this is going to be more of an overall vibes thing. So we can certainly drill down on that when we're strapped for content ideas in the future.
Will this bring up the same? Nah, close enough. This is my lore one that I'm making right now.
Perfect.
People get to watch me do it in real time. Keep going. So
also the so one thing that I think we should factor into it, and this is actually a bombshell, I think, and it just occurred to me, is the vibe of the factions channel on the official Discord.
You want to do a chat? Oh my god! Oh, okay, that's a third tier list we have to go through now.
Oh, I didn't. No. I mean, I'm saying that these are all part of that's part of the vibe calculation.
Is what their actual, so it's competitivity, how well they play on the table and do in the game and what they have available to them, their lore as a faction, and how the Discord, the Conquest main Discord views them.
No, I'm gonna boil it down to 3 elements.
Jesus, no one's surviving F tier.
Yeah, this is going to be a make or break episode for us, I think, with these parameters. God. But so I think it should be how they handle, how they feel, and how their faction Discord is on the official.
What do you mean how they feel and how they handle? What is this is this a biscuit?
Well, because because how they handle is like tangibly like how they play. So I want to frame it in like real terms, but how they feel is like a combination of where their balance is at, internal and external, how the various fluff factors work into it, things like that.
Okay.
And then the Discord is just Just me
F
being
tier,
rude.
F tier, F tier. Like, so are we putting? Is that those are your 3 criteria, and we are going to be putting them on?
I'm gonna say the first 2 are serious, and the third one was just to provoke a reaction because I don't think we're gonna do ourselves any favors with that.
No, because nothing survives F tier.
Yeah. So I guess it really comes down to just like how they play, and then just like how the faction feels over, I don't know, I guess the last year.
Okay, that's very fair. I can have the second tier list open that I made. We could flop back over there and throw on our hot takes of what the Discord views it as, and then compare them at the end. We could,
yeah.
So as we do each faction, I can swap between the 2, and be. Wow, you can't even tell. There we go. There's 2 now. I can swap between the 2, and we'll go like what this is on the Discord compared to like what we actually feel. I do agree with your first 2 takes. Mine were going to be more like its viability, like its internal list building aspects, how it plays on the table for sure. But it was going to be more based off of like what I've seen other high players be able to do with that faction, how it kind of ends up playing and generally being. If you are a listener or a watcher, there's no there's no data behind this. This is literally just like our opinion.
This is truly the most feelings based content that we've produced.
Yeah, this is just us having fun. So with that, we are going to be doing them in the order of, I believe, released. So I'm not sure if Nords or Dweg came out before which one, like after Spires. So I'm just doing Nords then Dweg. So if I got this wrong, I would love to know. I'd love to get a comment, because this is the only one that I don't know of. If like after Spires, was it Dweg home or was it Nords who came out next?
I'm positive it was Nords.
I feel like it was 2. Okay, 100K. Where would you put 100K?
On the vibes tier list?
Yeah, on the first tier list of like it not on the Discord one, the one that is us being serial about it.
See, in my mind, like these, all the factors that I outlined, sorry, not to split hairs over this, were sort of harmonized into a single tier placement, but I see that you're looking at a different tier listing for each of the sort of criteria that I suggested, so that's fine. But
no, I think the second tier list, wow, I gotta this is where I think we will put the factions on here where we think the Discord views that faction.
Oh, okay, like our Discord?
No,
the official.
The official, what we think the official Discord would rate these factions, just off of our views from reading.
Oh wow, that's wild. Okay.
Yeah, you wanted to go hard.
Yeah, all right.
So reading the official Discord, what we think other people would view each of these factions.
Wow.
I will start. However, the first one will be just us, what we think, and we will have to fight for a spot. So if I think something is S and you think it's F, then we will have to battle until we figure out where it should be.
That's fair.
Use consensus government.
I feel like because I'm suggesting the positions in the tier list and then justifying my decisions, everything is going to feel hot as hell for every faction that's not mine.
This is what people want.
Perfect. So I guess we're starting with 100 Kingdoms.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, taking everything on the balance, C tier faction.
C tier.
C tier.
Oh, okay. I'm dying. Yeah. Why?
Angry and up the blood.
Oh my god. You doing this to hurt me?
So the reason my arguments for this are as follows. They got Space Marine datasheetitis.
Okay,
they got too much options. And too many lords. Just in general. It's not. Fuck? Yeah, I don't know. And then there's a bunch of religion guys, and it's just like the overall vibe and the feeling that I get from the 100 Kingdoms is just like, that's not where I want to be.
Well, there's 100 of them.
it could be. Yeah, I know. So it's just like, imagine double America.
I don't, because we live close enough to America. I don't need to imagine. I just need to look across the border.
So that's the 100 Kingdoms to me. It's just it's fine. It's good enough. There's definitely like it's better than being peed out of a engineered organ into a vat for the spires. But you know, there are better ways to live.
I would easily put 100K in A tier. I think they have a lot of strong things going for them. Faction wise, they are dirt cheap. They have a lot of like list diversity. Like you can do a lot of different things and make a lot of different lists. You don't feel locked in while playing them.
You're looking at the Ashen Dawn.
Well, the Ashen Dawn are some other problems. The Ashen Dawn increase, like, just make them super good, but also fuck up internal balance a ton. Like, to out point cost them, you'd have to, like, go super high to make them not worth it for the point costs, and even then, people would still probably take them. And it's just like, ugh. I really like their lore. It's kind of a mix of what you would expect coming out of Europe, but they just like fucked with it so much, and because of all the other factions kind of have to interact with 100K because they're right in the middle, they get so much stuff going on, and a lot of spires, towers are in the kingdoms, so they have a lot of interactions as well as Dwaycombe holds. That they're always interacting with people, and they're not like off on their own on a peninsula or off on some islands or anything. Like they're always in the action. There's always something happening with 100K. They're getting Dwaycombe are like coming out and like going to a new house and just killing everything in the way. Spires are always testing stuff out in the field. Nords are like, give me some good wheat. I live in a frozen place. So there, there's always something going on lore wise with 100K. What I really like.
This is what having a friend who lives in a big city is like. Like, this is where the action is. So everything's going on in the 100 Kingdoms.
Yeah. And they're also, like, a majority of the regiments are cheap and effective. Like, you can't... Like, they're not fancy, but if she don't find you handsome, at least she'll find you handy.
And, that's the thing. I'm judge me as you will, but I'm a girl who values flash over substance. And so in that regard, unfortunately, the 100 Kingdoms just for me don't even in light of the lore just don't have the wow factor. Yeah, they just don't have the wow factor to me.
Oh yeah, they are for sure basic human compared to everyone else. Like they got some like magic religious stuff going on in the orders who are like getting juice off of like dead god powers. But a lot of them are just in a fantasy world. You decide to play human fighter.
Yeah, that's that doesn't, that's not me. I get it if that's what people want, but to me that's
Would you? I think they're A tier for sure. I could even make a case for S tier, but I see your viewpoints based on their vibes. Would you settle in the middle at B tier for 100K?
Yeah, I was gonna say I think we got to split the difference and make it a B.
Okay, B tier. All right, let's go over to
capitulate.
We bellichulated. All right, 100K on the Discord, on the Parabellum Conquest Discord. Where do you think the community rates this faction?
Oh, like S?
Oh, you think the community rates 100K S tier?
Well, no, I don't know about that. I'm trying to think because I don't really look in other factions channels all that much for all the shit I was talking about judging them.
I love that like we've somehow decided that it's like, okay, we're gonna do our normal tier list, and then at the same time we're gonna make a tier list of what other like a large population of people thinks about it based on writings we've kind of casually read.
Yeah, and we admittedly don't really read.
Yeah. Like there's times where stuff is popping off and I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. I have other things to do. I'm gonna leave. There's other times where I'm like, yes, the 100 Kingdoms player are trying to have a ballista again. Cool. Let me know when you want a real monster. Or no monsters at all. Like, God.
Yeah. The Never mind. What I was gonna say was very stupid. No, I would say probably. Like, I feel like Ash and Dawn again are skewing this because I think that's gonna make, because there's a lot. We'll say players who are more likely to get shaken by the presence of a big horse on the battlefield.
Not just
So
one big horse, but 10 big horses.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're the kind of maniac that runs a 2x5. Go to hell, first of all. Second of all, enjoy your wins, I guess.
Hey! I lost.
But, yeah, I don't know. I think overall, like, people seem to, in spite, like, you know, obviously I'm a self-avowed freak, and I always want to play the weird, you know, people in an unusual species of people in a game, and so I'm definitely skewed in a different direction. But people just seem to love playing just normal guys in these games. And I'll never get that myself, but
so I think
can't deny that it happens.
I think it's like the reason why people play Human Fighter for D&D, because it's like it's kind of like the everyman character for like stories. Like people can easily put themselves into that role. Like if someone said, hey, you're a dude who swings a sword, you can realistically believe in yourself to train with a sword enough to actually swing that sword and do the things that you're doing in Dungeons and Dragons. So that's why you're playing a human fighter. Like it's very grounded in reality.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's like one of the things why I like about 100K is like it is grounded in reality of like their systems of government, the problems they have. Like these are problems that the real world has had at various points in history. But it allows people to really connect with that faction because it is just brave humans with sticks. That like,
Good way to plug.
Yeah. Read Hannah's stuff; it's good. Her blog is Brave Humans with Sticks. You can find her on the BonkTable Discord. Description, the link below. She posts in the community channel, and you can read her stuff. I always like pop in and I'll read like 2 or 3 back to back, and I always enjoy reading them. But yeah, this is like any person can be part of 100K, and a lot of people associate with that very
as long as you own land,
or you're a filthy peasant,
or you're dying in your lights.
Yeah, hope you don't contact the Baconic Plague. Have fun with that. So I also think the faction's very strong. It's still I think the Discord, like the community at large, views the faction very strongly. It's done very well in like tournaments. It has the powerhouse of the Ash and Dawn behind it. It's very easily like an A tier faction. That's where I would put it from the community standpoint.
Mitochondria of the 100 Kingdoms, the Ash and Dawn.
They really are.
Sorry, it's a really niche joke. I don't know if that's going to actually land for people.
I went to high school. I know what you're doing.
No, I see. I don't know how many people got the powerhouse of the cell analogy, but nonetheless.
I hope everyone who's listened to this has at some point done biology.
I know, and everybody's going to be like, yeah, everybody heard that joke. Fucking dumb idiot, and then I will feel like that dumb idiot.
No one's ever called you out on being a dumb idiot. There's been no comments.
My day, and that's the thing. That means my reckoning is coming in a much...
Somebody's gonna be like, this cast person sucks. I'll be like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah,
I'll be that girl who's crying underneath the blanket. I'll be like, leave Cassandra alone. Oh.
I need that. I need people like that in my life. But no, it's see, that's the thing is like if you're a big asshole piece of shit all the time and nothing happens, that means the universe is saving it up for you.
Oh boy!
So I know when my day comes, it's gonna be bad.
I just don't be an asshole. It's not a hard thing to follow through.
Speak for yourself, partner.
I will. I know what's going on with you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, back to the first tier list. This is our own Spires. Do you want me to do my assessment of Spires?
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Okay, so I think Spires is really interesting. I like their kind of like creation story of how they were fleeing this calamity on their home planet, and they're not even local to Ia. They're an invasive species. I really like that. I also like how the Savian lineage is like the biggest douchebag asshole in the entire world, because he just showed up and he was like, "Who has the highest royalty blood?" And they're like, "You do, now that you've entered." And he's like, "Cool, shut the door." And they're like, "What?" And he's like, "Yes, shut the door so that no one else can come, because they're right on our tails." And they shut the door, and he was like, "Ooh, we're good." And then people were like, "Hey, that's kind of bullshit." He's like, "Well, I have the highest royalty blood count, so like, fuck you." And and then a bunch of people split off and formed other factions because he was a douchebag. But I really like how their whole society is based off of how high you are in a tower or in one of the spires, and like all their weird bio stuff. Parabellum has been great in coming out with more and more creepy, like H.G. Geiger weird monstrosities. Like the new Abomination model is fantastic. They play really well. Like, their internal faction balance is actually really, really good. There's always something in Spires you can grab and use. They have a couple, like, build archetypes. So they're not, I don't find them as, like, weird and diverse changing as 100k will be. Like, you can do a lot more with the lists and what you're grabbing. In Spires, you kind of, fall under a couple archetypes, and you just kind of, like, move around those pieces in the archetype for what you're trying to do. Like, if you're trying to go, like, brute spam, or, like, Avatar stuff, or you're trying to like get some more guns focused and weird shit like that, or going down like the Ferromancy Biomancy path. Like, but they have a really good roster, and they play really well on the table. They are I would say they have a high skill ceiling, so like the better you are at the game and better with them, the more you're going to get out of them. However, they have a not a low skill floor, but like a medium skill floor. There's some lists in there that are very easy to play in Pilot, but as you develop into Spires, you can play some of the more crazy stuff, and at that point, you know, your skill floor will increase, and you'll have to get to that point to play them more effectively. So I think there's a lot going on for Spires. These guys have also done really well competitively. So, easy A tier.
No denying that.
You know,
I'm not saying...
I might even put them at S tier because I love their lore so much. Because it's just, I love reading stories about douchebags doing douchebag stuff. Like Nagash from Warhammer Fantasy is like one of the biggest douchebags ever, and I loved reading his trilogy.
All
right,
that's interesting. That's telling. I'm not going to tell you how this has influenced my scoring, but basically, I'm finding that my judgments here are really coming down to would I enjoy being a person from this faction, and again, I'm not saying how what I'm about to say impacts my assessment of things in that regard either. But if you're just a person in the Spires...
Are you a drone or a clone?
Like a clone. Like, you have some autonomy, you have a day-to-day life, you get things done, you make decisions, you have like a job, you know, work in the vats or whatever. Or you're like a minor noble, I guess.
Would work in the vats?
Yeah, you're right. You own a bunch of guys who work the vats, I guess, and you hang out and do other stuff. But like, imagine how many structures, and I'm not saying that they are this, but functionally, in the way that they operate and the way that they look, are identical to just buttholes of different sizes.
Oh my
God! Walk through to get to places that you have to stick your hands in to get things out of, that are used to operate different parts of the machinery of the Spire. I think it's a higher number than you're imagining.
So everything's an orifice.
Well, and I just don't want to walk around looking at buttholes all day. Well, different podcast. But for the purposes
after
of
dark.
Yeah, for the purposes of this argument, I don't want to spend all day looking at buttholes. And that's hard for me not to think about.
Is that what you see from every Spires player? Oh, that guy's touching buttholes. Ooh.
Yeah, I just see a table full of buttholes. It's a pathology. But it just like, I mean, in terms of the game, like, they seem fun. The design, I think they're probably, in terms of like, they are actually probably an S tier faction, just in terms of like, they're very unique looking, but they capture what Conquest is all about and epitomize it in a way, in terms of what they are in the design. So it's like
the twisting of lore.
Yeah, I think they're a little too yucky to be like the face of the game, but it's definitely like in a way they're the orcs, if that makes sense.
Of like what, fantasy?
Not fantasy, but of like the setting of Conquest in the sense that they're like very distinct and specific, but still a twist on something, and they're like sort of setting defining.
Yeah, I think I do agree with you. As a setting, I don't like.
Like they're not like orcs in any like
but like
tangible way, but just in terms of them being an iconic piece of the setting.
Well, yeah, I would agree with you there. Like, I'm really glad that Parabellum started Conquest with the 100k and Spires 2-player starter set to like. That's how people got into the game. Like, you have something that's very grounded and then something that's like out of this world, because a lot of the other factions until we get later on are still kind of grounded, but Spires are so out of there comparatively.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the Parabellum Discord tier list.
I mean, they're going to rate them high too. Like, the Spires are just a hit, and I was going to touch on this for our list, but like, boy, people are into the Spires as well, which we don't need to get into in too much depth, but there's no denying that it's the case.
Yeah, there has been more weird shit about Spires than I have seen about any other faction.
Yep,
but like,
straight up.
I do think people really enjoy them. There's a lot of talk about how to get Spires to work and understand Spires. People are always like interested to learn about Spires and do their weird wacky combos and do the best with Spires. And people do come to play the game for Spires. I think there's a lot going for Spires from the community standpoint as well.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of discussion from that channel and a lot of development of the tech that's there, and there's a lot to develop, so it makes sense. But yeah, they're not. I've never seen Spires players be too like, just like, you know, apocalyptic about their faction.
No, they haven't descended into anarchy. So that's a plus for you, Spires.
Yeah, good job.
Good job. All right,
we technically ruled that out of the criteria, and yet it's wormed its way back in.
Do whatever.
Yep.
Back to our tier list. Nords. You get to start with your reasoning where this should go.
This is a tough one, actually. Like, I think this is going to surprise you as well, but this is probably another C for me.
Really? Another fine. Okay, C.
Yeah. Because the reason being is the thing with Nords is it's all a very mixed bag.
Okay.
Like aesthetically and lore wise, like, I feel like I'm the opposite of you in many ways. Like, I'm not necessarily interested in good guys, but I'm not a big fan of assholes. And Nords in general kind of skew on the asshole side of things, because like they're just going around robbing people and stuff. So it's like, and I mean that's all well and good. Like, I'm actually not judging them for that. It's just like, I don't want to get robbed. And I don't think it'd be fun to live in the Nords world either, because first of all, I don't like the cold.
You live in Canada.
I had almost nothing to do with that.
I can't escape, so I'm trapped here.
Yeah.
You also live in the city that is the second coldest place on the earth per population. And the first coldest place per population is a prison in Russia. So you choose to live here.
Well,
like,
I mean, that's one. Just because it's not a prison doesn't mean I chose it. Like, this is just where I came out.
Oh my god. This is where I was spawned from the Spire spawning pool. I'm a drone, you see.
I rolled out of a big tower-sized butthole right here, just like everybody else who's stuck here.
Yeah. They were like, here's your fur skin pelt, a beard and an axe, get raiding. And you're like, oh boy. Yeah.
Exactly. So, like, the Nords' whole deal is pretty rough. I like a lot of their units, but aesthetically, like, for every Valks, you're getting Uger.
Uger are good. Just look ugly as fuck. But they are.
Well, that's exactly my point. Like the aesthetic is just. So there's a lot of stuff that's really aesthetically on point for the Nords, and but it's counterbalanced by an equal amount of stuff.
I really like Nord's aesthetic. I was actually gonna play Nords, but Merc Crossbow, Steel Legion, and Hustle Knights really stole it for me. When I was started to play the game, I was actually looking at Nords.
Yeah, I don't know. I always liked the high fantasy. I liked the trolls. I like the Fenner. I like the Valks. But I like the Raiders have a lot of charm.
Yeah.
So I do love them. But
did you ever play Age of Mythology when you were a kid?
No.
Or sorry, you're a like 600-year-old vampire. Did you ever play Age of Mythology like 20 years ago?
Middle stage of my life.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I have.
Okay, so it is. It's the same people who made Age of Empires and Age of Empires 2, but then they decided to make another game, and it was the factions were Greek, Egyptian, and Norse. And the Norse had a lot of like regular foot troops, like your Raiders, your Huskarls, your Velks. But then its mythology units were like fire giants, mountain giants, ice giants, Fenris wolves, like all the mythology stuff. And I think Nords really does very well with that aesthetic, with that mythology, and then twisting it for its ways to be part of this setting. Like I really like the Nords aesthetic. For what it's doing and how it catches all those things that really exemplify Norse mythology with the people.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me, it's just the stuff that hits, but the stuff that doesn't. The giants in general are like honestly a big miss for me.
Like even the sea and ice guy.
The problem is, I'm just like,
or is it you have too many fat daddy bod mountain giants?
No, I would. Well, I wouldn't say that would make it more appealing, but I was on Team Dad Bod Minotaurs when that drama was unfolding. But
we'll talk about it when we get to City States.
Yeah, we definitely will. But just a giant, like a huge guy, is like just feels like a missed opportunity when we're talking about giant units. Like if you have the opportunity to make a really big thing. Like, I know that this gets a little bit tougher with the Nords versus some other things, but, like, on the other hand, they're the mythology that has spawned, or that encompasses a giant planet-devouring wolf, so I think there's a lot of unmined potential here. But yeah, it just seems like if other factions are getting, like, pseudo-dragons or like big dinosaurs or horrific bug monsters and shrimp monsters, and you're just like, here's this big fucking guy.
Here's my next big naked man. Get to work, kid.
He's incredibly bald. He's Harkonnen levels of bald. Get to it.
Yeah. Okay, how about their play though? What's their play style?
So their play style and this kind of dovetails into, and this, you know, they get dragged down on this but
we'll get to the other tier list after.
Because they are like I love them. Like they've become my main faction because I don't know if people remember this, but I actually was a Woodrune main when we started this podcast. But over time, I've just settled into playing as the Nords. I think they have a great playstyle, and it's really interesting, but, like, for some reason, people don't accept that they're the way they're supposed to be played, and they think that it's just, like, the
run forward and die faction.
Straight up the middle, as it's been termed, faction. And, so it, I think they play great, but the fact that it's somehow, in spite of there being no secrets about how the factions played, that it's become this weird, like, they don't play the way they're supposed to thing, and it's like, I don't know.
Like,
so I feel like in that regard, like, it's fine for me, but I think it does in terms of the overall assessment of them play a part.
Like, so their playstyle, I think, actually matches their lore on, like, a realistic standpoint. Like, they are raiders. Like, they're not going to be there bricking up, taking punches. They have guys who can do that for sure, but they're not the best at it. They're just lots of them. They're very maneuverable. They're doing a lot of damage, and they're cutting through people and doing their job and getting out. Like, I think they do that play style well.
It's just
people don't play them like that. And I do think that hurts them because like I have seen locally when people try and play them like 100K or like Dweg Home and stuff like that, and they get hurt because of it. Like it doesn't work. You gotta play them kind of more like a goblin list. A really good parallel that's kind of been popping up lately is that Nords are the wood elves of Conquest. You want to play them. Yep. You want to. It's all about your positioning and your finesse with the faction. So, if you're caught out, you're gonna lose stuff. If you're playing very well and have good positioning, you're gonna get a lot out of Nords because Nords punches up very well. They have a lot of regiments that are weak defensively, but they do more offensive power than they should for their weight class that they are, or for the point cost they cost. But yeah,
110 points for Raiders is
who can like just
beautiful gift from God,
like just chop through people. It's like Jesus. So yeah, I do also think they have really strong lore of like the tree, like Yggdrasil burning, all the Einharjar weren't activated early enough, and all the Einharjar start fucking with the local population, creating all the monsters that Nords players have. Like that's really funny, I find.
So, and that's the thing, and this might be diving into a bit more of a lore discussion, I think on top of it a philosophical discussion, even over and above that maybe is not appropriate for this setting, but I love a good story about people emancipating themselves. So in that regard, like the pre-history of the Nords is phenomenal because it's like, oh, they got subjugated by the giants and that stinks, but then the Einhar showed up and they started kicking fucking ass, and then all of a sudden the Nords were the guys, and the giants had to swear fealty to them. So that's kind of cool, except like it's a little problematic on the what they did to the giants afterwards side of things. But that's the problem, is it's like so much of this, like there's very few things where I'm just like, well, that's really bad. I don't like this at all. I don't even like this in Pretend. There's a very short list of things like that for me, but one of them is keeping slaves, and I don't like that the Nords were just like, all right, we're done being slaves. Let's raid the mainland and get some slaves.
The slave thing, we could use that. We could make a religion out of this.
So what the giants did to us sucked, but they had some good ideas.
But like, now we're in control.
Yeah, it's just fucked to me. So like in that sense, like the vibe is off for me there. Like I like playing as the Nords, but it's very hard for me to think of myself as like a cool person when I'm doing it, because it's like, how many of these people are just going to work my fields when this is over?
Okay.
And the answer is not one that I love.
Yeah, I could for the vibe-based Conquest faction ranking, C-tier Nords, probably appropriate. How they actually play, and if you're a good Nord player, like this is easily an S-tier faction.
Yeah, 100%. Like I feel like
I want to say that just because a lot of people are like, oh, Nords isn't working. It's like, nah, you're just like,
barring like maybe 3 factions, I think that in skilled hands, unfortunately, most, and in terms of just how they play, like right now, most of the factions are pretty good. Close to S tier. Yeah,
like AS. Like if you're being above, you're really good. C might need a little bit of work, but like I get why you're putting Nords down there for the vibes. But if we were doing one that is just like straight
just on the table,
yeah, just playing the game, I think Nords is S tier for sure. But let's go to the community tier list and see what they think.
Well, they're gonna put them in an F.
All right, yeah, I'm not even gonna argue that one.
It's
there has been so much talk in the Nords chat of how Nords are terrible. I'm just gonna say this: they're not. They're actually really good. Just stop running forward and dying. Tilt your regiments. Like there's tons of stuff you can do. I would recommend watching battle reports featuring Nords on BonkTable. I'd recommend battle reports featuring Nords on Competent Conquest. But I know the Discord community doesn't view Nords very well because Nords just kind of die. They get if you're a new player, Nords is not it doesn't help making mistakes. Like Nords is not mistake friendly. Like Dwagholm, what we'll get into next, is you can make mistakes and still come out. Nords is a faction where if you make a mistake, your regiments are going to die and it's going to cascade very poorly. However, if you play well, take advantage of your opponent's mistakes. Nords is going to punch up and cascade advantagely towards you very well. So it's more on the player than the faction for Nords is what I tend to find, but I know the Conquest community would probably put Nords down at F tier.
Yeah. Incidentally, that's an interesting point. I wonder if there's a way that you could get hard numbers on this, but it feels like how easy a faction is in Conquest really comes down to how many play errors can you make before you just lose. And with Nords, it's one or two.
Oh, if I took 100 players who had not played Nords before, or sorry, not 100, maybe. If I took 100 players who didn't play Nords before and 90% of them lost their game, that's 90 players out of the 100, might not be good for new players. Or I give Nords to a player and they're how many games does it take you to lose? You're racing towards the bottom.
Well, no, it's just I think so. Conquest, and I think that this is really not something we intended to get into right now, but I'm just going to.
We're just chatting.
On the just in the discussion that we have on our Discord on a sort of skill development level, a lot of it is really focused on developing the board state and making sure that's favorable to you, and then just sort of the game largely is setting that up, and then everything plays out.
Yeah, and your first 4 turns are super important.
Yeah, and so the errors that you make moment to moment in the game will tend to be game defining, whether it's you've deployed a unit down the wrong flank, or they are out of position, or you've played too aggressively with them in a different way, things like that. So it feels with a faction like Nords, because they just, as soon as something touches them, they start to vanish. And because you're relying usually on a decent amount of lights, or at least I have been with the Jarl list that I'm building. I'm sure if other people are using other generals, then it might work out differently for them. But I do find that I do have to skew a little bit heavier into lights than I normally would with other factions. And it's just all those things compounding. So then when you do lose a medium, it really fucking sucks. Mm-hmm. So it feels Nords, you're 1 or 2 mistakes away from a loss, even at the most advantaged scenario. Whereas with Dweghome, for instance, you've got more of a buffer of errors that you can make throughout the game and still recover from.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
I 100% agree.
But it's just I wonder if we could through sufficient research and testing figure out how many mistakes you can make per faction before you just lose.
That would be really interesting because players want to win games. So to win games, you got to play well and use your tools to play what you've brought in your list. So finding those mistakes would be tough, because then it would be what was the trend on the table? What was the scenario? What did you play? What did your opponent play? Because of all the list builds, it's more. It's kind of ELO ranking. It would be probably easier to just get an ELO system going for Conquest than it would be to figure out the fact, because then at the ELO you could see hey, this player's 200 or 2,000 ELO. They played 100 games of Spires, 100 games of 100K, 50 games of Nords, and then 50 games of City States. They have and then you could see they won 48 out of 50 of the City States. They won 30 of the Nords. They've lost 80 of the 100K. They've won 100 with Spires. You can see it all, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's okay, why is this player not doing well with 100K? They put a ton of games in it. There's stuff like that. You can do a little more analysis, but that's something people would have to submit, and then what they played. It's easier for League of Legends is a good example, because it keeps a track of list of all your games, who you played, what items you bought, how long the game lasts, what was the kill death, all that information they just store and post it on their website, and you could just I know some people, when I was heavily into League of Legends, would oh, we're playing this guy, and they would like look up the entire opposing team just to figure out how good they are. When we would just like random queue with a bunch of like we'd form a group and then random queue into some people, and then be like, oh, we gotta watch out for this guy. He only plays Teemo. It's like, oh, he's playing Teemo today. Like, fuck. So yeah, I know there's people who do that.
No, I mean what I'm proposing is not realistic, but I do think it's an interesting thought exercise at any rate, because I do think
I agree with
a critical number of errors that you can make before the game is just gone for you.
This is unsolvageable.
Yeah,
I think it would be we would have to play on TTS and just play into the position where we think it would be unrecoverable, and then send it to like Carl and be like, win the game off of this board state, and just make him do like those thought puzzles. Like, there's chess puzzles. I don't know how much chess you play. Like I play a little bit, and there's times there's like you can go into the puzzles and it's like checkmate in 2 moves, and you're like, oh, how the fuck? And you're like, I'll sit there for like hours trying to figure it out, and it's like, oh, what the fuck am I supposed to do? So I like. That would kind of be the requirement, but then you're putting all these stupid puzzles onto one person and if they can't win, then it's like, okay, well, that's an unrecoverable board state.
Mm-hmm.
How many mistakes did you make? Well, I made 3. It's like, okay, well, were they big mistakes, or were they like, oh, these were big mistakes? Okay. Oh, I made 8. Oh, they were little mistakes with added up. Okay. Like, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Force Carl to play more games.
No, last game I played, though, there was definitely, like, the last error of the game that I made. I was just like, okay, well, that lost me the game, so good game.
Yeah. I think the last game I played, I was really humming and hawing about where to put my second unit Gilded Legion on the table, and it was like, no, I gotta put it on the left, even though it's not as great as I would like it. It could be even worse on the right side, and how the game developed, it would have been true. It would have been even worse on the right side. Okay, back to our tier list. Dweghome. You went over Nords. I'm going to talk about Dweghome.
Mm-hmm.
So where did I place Dweghome? I think they're an A tier. I think they're really strong. They play very well, as we've stated. Like, you can make a lot of mistakes with them and still come out on top. They are new beginner friendly. Like, this is like if you were a player and you said, "Hey, I want to get into the game, but I want something that's like easier to play, fun to use, isn't really complicated," I would totally push people towards Dweghome. Their problems is that they are kind of limited on what's good in the faction. They have 4 characters, and it's really like you play Tempered Sorcerer, and that's it. Do they have 4 characters? Yeah, they do. There is Argent Killua is kind of making a comeback though lately, so it's kind of opening up a second way to build and play Dweghome, what's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
As well as a little bit from the Steel Shaper, but it's not as great. Them being kind of stuck in one playstyle is like the big thing that hurts them, so I think I actually might knock them down to B tier for that. Because that really sucks. Like, you're gonna buy a ton of minis, like especially people who want to play like Hold Ray and do really well with him. Like, missing out on the magic of Dweghome just really sucks. Like, I know there's people who are like, oh, Dweghome, fantasy dwarves, we don't use magic. It's like, no. They have magic, play the magic. It's very good. Like, think of them as chaos dwarves from fantasy. Use the magic. It's very good. Yeah. Like, their lore is also really interesting. Like, a bunch of dragons got into a war with Spires, and Spires was like, hey, stop killing us. And the dragons were like, well, we're not as powerful as our parent dragons. We want a slave race. And they're like, fine, we'll make you a slave race. And they gave them the dwarves. But the dragons were like, we want the dwarves to know that they're a slave race so they feel bad about being a slave race. And they're like, fine, we'll program that into the dwarves. Also, we want them to have memory with a capital M so they never forget anything, and they remember everything, and that they remember everything from their parental line as well, so we don't have to train them. They're like, fine, we'll do that too. What caused a bunch of problems to the point where the dwarves dug too deep, found the primordial power of war, lit themselves on fire, and used that to kill all the dragons.
And I like that. Like, I'm really into that.
Yeah, and like, in Dweghome, if you're doing manual labor or menial labor, that's a form of punishment. Because that's what slaves do. And Dweghom are not dwarves, they are not slaves. They are Dweghom. So I really like that about their lore and just how they interact. Like they're not like, as they're told through the lore, they're not kind of like they're kind of told like their civilization and how their people interact, but how other factions view them. They're not viewed as another rival country or state or anything like that. They're more viewed as a force of nature. Because the Dweghom will sit in their holds for like 200 years, and then all of a sudden, the entire hold will go out on a campaign, and they will kill everything on their way to another hold, and then go inside there and live in there. And you're like, what the fuck happened? It's like, oh, they're just moving houses. So they decide to burn everything in their way from between the two houses. Like, what the fuck is happening? Like, that's, I think that's the lore bit. No, that's the lore bit in the companion book that Parabellum put out, was when Spires 100k were fighting, that Dweghom campaign showed up, and then Spires and 100k were like, oh fuck! So their lore is really interesting. Their interactions with the world is really interesting. Their just willingness to just go full out and kill is really interesting. Like, I think lore-wise, this is one of, like, they're really cool and interesting, and I really like them. I think they're really great new player friendly. My only real issue with them is that they're kind of restricted on the list front. So I would say they're a solid B tier faction. How about you?
Yeah, it's probably about where I'd put them, honestly. Like, they were definitely, you know, they've gone through some stuff in the course of their development, from being a comically overpowered faction to now being a decently reined in one. I don't think they're hell to play against or anything. In fact, I would say, in terms of my list of like factions that I don't want to just play a pickup game against, I have way less of a problem with them than I would have this time a year ago.
Yeah, I agree as well. Like, they were such a problem last summer, to the point where it was like, wow, I really hate this. Like, I have to use full brain power to beat not even optimized Dweghom list. I think that was the worst part. Like, they have so many things that are going for them, like, that are just new player friendly, that are built towards defense, that you're really good. They don't do anything. They're not fast. They don't have Vanguard. They don't have double time. They don't have fluid. Like, they're not doing any like weird positioning tricks. They just have their stats. They are very much the stat faction, and I like that in a game. But I think Parabellum has also done a great job of balancing them off lately, so that they are still the stats faction, but they're not ridiculous stats where people cannot compete into them.
Yeah.
So you think B tier is good for the vibes of Dweghom?
I do, at this point.
Yeah, I do agree. All right, what do you think the community rates Dweghom as?
I'm gonna put them in. Honestly, just like, I think everything that we said probably echoes true for the community at large, but they probably feel a little bit. They don't have that not being Dweg players in 1.5 taste in their mouth, so I'd say that probably the community would put them in an A.
I would agree. I think the community would also put them in an A. I think Dweghom does really well, like, community and globally wise. I do think there's a bit of like salt in the mouth, not from Dweghom players, but everyone else who had to deal with Dweghom. But I think from like the Discord channel that Dweghom is in, I think they're an easy A tier. People love them. They do well. They're good.
Yep. There's can't go wrong with Dweg, and these days I wouldn't even be mad to play against them. So
cool. Because I'm building them. Got 2 more boxes of Flame Berserkers to build. All right. Your baby, Wadroon.
Wadroon. Oof, that's a tough one right in this moment in time. In terms of like the lore and the design and all the aesthetics, like they are an S tier for me. Because first of all, dinosaurs. Second of all, orc babes. Third of all, just the general aesthetic is pretty on point. Like, I like the, sort of Mesoamerican and indigenous touches. Obviously, well, it's not obvious unless you hang out in our Discord or talk to me, but I'm a huge Maquaddle fan. Those sword-like weapons that are, it's like a rod or a stick with obsidian or sharpstone shards.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the best killing implement that man has ever conceived.
They were like, hear me out. What if we made a club and put obsidian spikes in it so it real fucks you up when it hits you? So it hits like a club, but also cuts like a scalpel. They're like, what? Like, yeah, we're doing it. Oh, okay.
And if you ever need to sharpen it, you just break it off in somebody.
Yeah, or get replacement, or just break it into smaller bits. It still cuts like a scalpel.
Yeah, so definitely I'm
Ridiculous
100%
weapon.
all in on those. So on that, if that was all we were looking at, S.
Perfect.
Easy.
Done.
Unfortunately, they're in a bit of a state right now.
Yeah.
To say the least. So they got some really harsh nerfs at the moment. And it's definitely hampered their effectiveness in a tangible way, and even the devs have acknowledged it and said that they're going to give the faction a rework. So I think that kind of tells the tale. So right now they're in a flux state in terms of how they actually play in a pretty tangible way. And that, I think, kind of lowers the tone a little bit in terms of where they're at in the moment. Like, they used to be really fun and exciting to play as, because you get big swingy turns and you could do goofy stuff with the chants and how it would interact with the units, but they've mostly filtered out all the fun ways that the interactions worked and made chanting sort of more of a infantry focused than anything else type deal. So in these regards, that definitely, I think, hampers the overall vibe that we're looking at there.
So we're going to drop them down, or are you going to keep them at S for their vibe?
No, I don't think it's an S, but I'm curious as to what your thoughts are there and where you would put them.
So, lore-wise, I think their Genesis story is really interesting, because Spires was very much like, hey, you know what? We've made a bunch of slave races out of existing stuff and material. This hasn't worked out. Let's just make a slave race from a blank slate. And they're like, sure. So they made a slave race, and they're like, it doesn't have conscious thought. They're like, well, fuck. Let's keep trying until we get conscious thought. And eventually they made, I think, 4 primordial Wadroon, or they're like the big 4. And they were like, sweet, we got the big 4. We're going to put them in stasis, and then we're going to use their DNA to make smaller Wadroon because they're way too big. And they made the Wadroon, and they're like, okay, this is actually really sweet. We're having a great time. And then there was like a knock on the door, and the Spire's like, oh, who's there? And it's like, Dwegholm. And they're like, what do you want? And they're like, we're going to kill all of you. And they're like, oh, shit. So they were like, we need to buy time so we can get out of here with all our research papers. And they just released the Wadroon towards the Dwegholm. And they opened up the vaults of all the weird shit they were doing. And then they booked it. And then the Wadroon fought the Dwegholm. The Dwegholm were kicking ass. 3 out of their 4 super people died. The last one was like, grabbed the survivors, ran off. Dwegholm cut a path through the oasis and went to their new house. Wadroon show back up. They're like, what are we going to do? Well, this oasis is providing us food and support, so they stay there. The vaults in the spire were opened up. They totaled it. There was like vaults underground. And all the dinosaurs come out, so it's like, you know, explains what, like, how dinosaurs are in the setting. Spire's creation, fucking around. Like, god damn it, Spires. Like, stop putting your goddamn fingers in so much shit. But and how they interact. There's the story of the Yukon Fazine. What's their last surviving, like, primordial Wadroon, traveling the world, learning about culture and all the different peoples of the world, coming back and realizing the Wadroon need better leadership, and then establishing their civilization and culture and their religion and how they do everything and how they view different aspects and roles in their society. Like, lore-wise, Wadroon is really interesting. However, table-wise, after the round of nerfs, they're not that great. There's always the problem of, this thing is really good if you get the chant off, and there's times where just you don't win the supremacy, or your opponent takes out the things that don't have chants, and you can't build up enough chant tokens because the things you need to chant beforehand are dead, or the thing that wants to chant dies early, and now your chanting is on a ranged unit in the back, and you're like, well, this kind of sucks. Like, I always kind of I know I couldn't play that system because it's too out of my own control of how I'm gonna do things. There are a couple regiments that just get away with it, like Queen Fanatic Braves, Chief Veterans, and like Chosen of Conquest, like how those regiments interact with characters works. But a lot of side stuff, their main army rule mechanic can just kind of get get the rug pulled from right under you, and it really screws you over at times, I found. I remember when we played early on, Wadroon not having a lot of defense on a lot of things and relying on that chant mechanic, I would just kill random shit before you got your chants off that would fuck up your chant mechanic, and then you're chanting like early or too late kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it really sucked. And yeah, with all the nerf side, like I think their lore is really good, but how they play currently, like D tier.
Yeah. I just through sheer sentimentality want them at a C, but I wouldn't argue with putting them at a D tier at the moment. The thing is, the chant mechanic, so it's a very cool idea. It just needs refinement because it's a lot of it's fiddly. There's a lot of mental load there, and it's on both sides. And then you have to be able to argue for why you just got a bunch of special rules and +1 clash to your opponent when it happens, and then that so a lot of people don't like playing into Wadroon because when somebody does get a big tier 2 or tier 3 chant off, it does feel like a negative play experience. And in a vacuum, I can see that.
So I think the negative play experience is from the opponent not understanding how chanting works. And chanting itself isn't really explained very well to begin with, and it's very hard to just understand innately how this system works.
Yeah.
That's what I usually find. And and sometimes people like keep their chant tokens in a really weird spot where you can't see them very well, like just they're too far away or they're behind like a dice tray or something. Like, I don't know, it's just really tough like that. It's gotten to the point where like I'll play again to Wadroon and I'm just like, yeah, whatever, cool.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna chant like you have laser beams and like cleave 1,000,000 protection and all that stuff, that's fine. Like I'll still find a way to win. I don't care at this point anymore.
Yeah, and I only got it for one turn, and I paid a premium for it.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is they seem to have they've put all these cool, engaging dinosaur models into the faction, and then they just don't want us to use them.
Yeah, it really sucks because people come for the big dino.
Yeah, literally every time I bust out those dinosaurs at the LGS, somebody stops to look at them. So there's something to be said for that.
I always loved it, the one guy who would come over and like look at my green lances on my Household Knights, and I'm like, I'm trying to play the game. Please stop standing beside me. Sit at the end of the table.
I don't want people to bother me when I'm playing, but at least it's good for the health of the game.
Yeah. Just go stand on the end of the table and look. It's A-okay being over there. Just stop standing right beside me when I need to move around the table.
Yeah. Please have a different kind of social anxiety right now.
Yeah. All right. Discord tier list. So where do you think the community ranks Wadroon?
Like an A.
Really?
Everybody likes them. The community itself generally it's only really people in what I've termed the BonkTourage, which is our associates and other content creators
our
who are friends with us. Yeah, so it's only in that circle are we really seeing a lot of discourse on the problems of the faction at the moment. Everybody else is focused on the positive, which God bless you if you can do that, but I have depression, so I'm not looking at the good parts of the faction.
Big Dino is still Big Dino.
Yeah, people seem to just generally love the faction, even in spite of its faults or the problems that it has. I think there's a certain amount of depth to the mechanic that does, if you're not as, if you haven't been playing for a really long time, it does sort of help to mask some of the problems with the faction.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's part of the problem as well, not the problem, but why maybe the general consensus of the faction is higher. Also, people love Dinosaur.
Yeah, I will say that the Wajun channel on the Parabellum Discord did eat itself when the nerfs came out. Like, it went hard on self cannibalism.
People got upset. I would say it was less of a backlash than when Slingers got nerfed.
Yeah, but Slingers got like a little bit of help back. I think their range drop and they got bumped back to 18 inches.
Yeah, but everyone got so mad that now there was a period of time also, I don't know if you recall, when anytime something got nerfed, a bunch of people would be like, well, if we complain about it enough, then we'll get hit. Just like with Wajun.
Yeah, no, that's not healthy. That's not healthy for the person doing it, the community, or the developer. Please do not do that.
Yeah.
Like, things change. Like, I don't know. Whenever there was like nerfs or buff, like I played a lot of War Machine, and whenever there was like a point cost adjustment or like the damage of a weapon change, I'd be like, well, it's just more expensive to produce that weapon. Oh, they're not using as good propellant in their shells. Like, war keeps moving, lines of supply change, so that's why, like, maybe we're further out, so now it costs more. Like, that's my lore reason in my head, my head canon. Yeah, I do think the community does still value Wajun very highly, though.
I think like the spiritually the vibes are immaculate. Like, Dinosaur riding orcs, you can't go wrong. But right now they unfortunately are suffering on a table in a way that impacts them. But yeah, I would say the community still. We've got too much shit in the A's though. We really got to get.
Well, maybe it's good. That's completely fair. Look, it's balanced.
Yeah.
You want B up. You want B's and up. Like that's a good sign.
Yeah, but I mean, we need controversy to put asses in the seats. So like,
that's why we have our own personal one. What's our vibes between the two of us? Like, look at the spread on our personal one. It's doing pretty good.
That's true. Yeah, that seems a little more grounded.
Okay, Old Dominion. You just did Wajun, so I'll do Old Dominion. I like their lore. So undead factions never really grabbed me aesthetically. I do like it has an undead Roman motif, but a lot of other things in the faction leans too much towards was it Byzantine? Am I saying that right?
Byzantine.
Yeah, it's Byzantine. They lean too much towards Byzantine and not like, I want to say like classic Rome. Like Caesar getting stabbed to death by his by the Senate levels of Rome, like that kind of Roman-esque. So that little bit of aesthetic hurts me. Well, not hurt me, but like I don't attach myself to that aesthetic as well as I would if it was just pure Rome, like the shields, the gladiuses, like that level. Like I know there's the what is it? The OP kits has the different shields, what are like more old Roman. Like if they did those on more of their minis, or just that was the shield, I would probably relate to them more. I like their aesthetic more. They do got lore wise, I think they got a lot going for them. Like Haziel being the god of humans, having this massive like civilization. Like they take a lot from like Roman history of like this massive great empire, it falling apart because it's way too big. Relating that bigness to this god who's just like fed up with everybody, who's making like archangels and other deities to deal with all the people who are asking for shit because he doesn't want to do it anymore. Him exploding and like combining with the primordial power of death, what fucks up everything. People running away in a great like calamity. Him sending a couple of his legions out to kill the World Tree. People running away and forming like different civilizations out of this downfall, like spires fucking around with people and making the Dweg home and all that really cool. The fall is like when the calendar changes from BC to AD, like it's that level of importance I kind of feel for the world and the lore of Conquest and Ea itself. Because there's like city-state sorcerer kings, the people from the steppes that are running around the outside of the kingdoms of the sorcerer kings. They're there. The 100 kingdoms are there. Like city-states. Like there's a ton of factions branch off after the Old Dominion falls apart. And so lore wise, I think it's really good. Aesthetically, it doesn't grab me as much if it was leaning more towards like Roman legionnaires than it is more towards Byzantine. Playstyle wise, they got a huge buff. Absolutely huge for what they're doing. Like, Dark Power Pool has been fixed. Like, I remember when we did the old D problem episode where I was saying their Dark Power Pool is leaning towards bringing too much chaff and not enough work. Now it's leaning towards work, but I don't think it's leaning negatively towards work. Like, it's not like you can take 6 work regiments and 1 chaff regiment, and then your Dark Power Pool is balanced out. It's like you can take a little bit more work stuff, and you're not prevented from doing that, but it's still balanced in a good way. They got a lot of options. They got a couple builds like the Archimandrite running around, machine gunning down people. The Strategos doing really well. I think the Ziliarch's kind of fallen off a bit due to the Strategos basically just getting an upgrade buff. Fallen Divinity, I don't know if that thing's gotten better. To be honest, I think just the changes to how Dark Power Pool tier works, it's gotten better. But I still kind of think it has some still baseline problems of just what it is and what it's doing. But a lot of other things in Old Dominion have gone better. It's been balanced out really well. One of the big things that is kind of a problem is the +1 to reinforcement rolls for everybody. That one, I think, is where it kind of tips itself too far in that, like, ridiculous aspect of being too strong. So I would easily put Old Dominion in, like, A tier. Its lore is really great. Regiments are really great. Everything it's doing is really great. It's really good as a beginner faction as well because you don't take resolve on, like, 90% of the regiments. So it's just... And then it also, like, punches up really well. You can do a lot with Old Dominion. It does have a weakness into shooting. But you can do really well with Old Dominion. I kind of want to put it in S tier, but I think it's S tier on the backs of, like, that +1 to reinforcement roll and, like, a very specific build. But overall, I think Old Dominion's, like, very much A tier.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a sort of a complicated calculus, I feel like, for me. Like, definitely the faction has gotten a lot better on the table, which it needed, because they were, like, bottom of the barrel before.
Yeah, this one, if we did this in January, F tier, making a new one, double F tier.
Yeah.
Like, God.
Tier. Yeah, so, like, I like their lore and I don't like their aesthetic, so I'm with you on that. The Roman stuff even doesn't really do anything for me personally.
Oh, don't worry. I have one where one of the next 2 factions I don't like their aesthetic of even more for different reasons.
Interesting. But yeah, so that part of it doesn't do it for me, but like I like they make a good center point to the human concerns of the setting.
Yeah.
And the fall is a good anchor for not only how it impacts the normal, like the 100 who would become the 100 kingdoms and the city states and the Sorcerer Kings, who to me make up like the baseline human factions, because Nords are kind of a different deal in my mind.
Yeah, well, they're trapped on a frozen
Einar stuff. Well, not they're isolated, and the Einar stuff also I think complicates things, because Einar blood has so permeated their culture that I don't think they're fully human anymore. But either way, that's a discussion for another episode, I guess. Or
we should do a lore episode.
Yeah, that would require me to do a lot of reading on the lore, though.
Well, I could read it and then give you my abridged version. We should do that.
Yeah, I'm down.
Okay, sweet. I love it.
Yeah, but I mean, I like their lore. I like the arc of Haslia. I like the character. Like, I like a god who's just like willed into being, and then was just like, well, I don't give a shit about these people. I want to do my own thing.
Like, I love how they kind of took like Haslia as more of like a Greek god who has faults, but is just a pretentious prick. Still, like,
yeah. So that's all fascinating to me, but their aesthetic sucks. On the table, I think they get high on the tier list in terms of their table value for something that for things that I think that are going to get pulled back. So I don't want to score them high on stuff that I know that isn't going to be around forever.
Yeah, I'm assuming that they're gonna get touched in maybe like 6 months. Like that's my gut feeling. This has no basis in anything. If I didn't have that gut feeling, I'd easily put them in S tier. But I feel like they're gonna get touched and like, okay, you were bad for quite a while. You were very good. Now we're gonna put you in a very good spot where it's acceptable and not like, fuck you, you undead bastard.
Like, yeah, it's just that like there's definitely like they overcorrected, and then I think it's going to get reined into whatever their hopefully more balanced form looks like. But yeah, no, A seems pretty fair.
Yeah. All right. Community Discord. Where would you put Old Dominion? I want to say I would put Old Dominion as C tier because I think a lot of players, especially a lot of new players, hate fighting them because of that no resolve and don't know how to deal with and interact with them. So they give that negative play experience.
Yeah. I think that's true.
While the faction itself is very good and very strong currently, I still think like other factions interacting with them, other players are still going to view them very poorly. And it's going to be in like two different reasons now, instead of them just being like a litmus test if a player has played long enough and knows how to deal with them, to do you know how to deal with them, and now do you know how to deal with their new bullshit that's really coming in. Like, yeah. Old Dominion's in a really good spot. What kind of hurts new players more because they just like skipping out on 33% extra damage from resolve just increases survivability of Old Dominion itself. And then with all their new toys and how they operate, they're just printing money at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's certainly a factor. It's tough, and it's hard to sell people on the idea that it's just like this is a manageable thing that you can play around. It's very easy to go, well, like, they don't take half the damage that I do, so
like if you're listening to this and you're having trouble in Old Dominion, I would recommend re-listening to the old D problem episode we released. Their weaknesses are still in there, and as a player, you can still use those same strategies to beat them, to fight current Old Dominion. Like, that has not changed. What's kind of, I don't know, it's really nice to still be able to use, they still maintain the same weakness even though they got a buff.
Yeah.
It shows like the developers care and understand about the faction of like where to buff it and where not to buff it so that it's still good and acceptable.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to our tier list. City-states. Where would you put city-states?
I don't have a lot of first-hand experience playing them, but I've been certainly watching the discourse. I think they're scoring low on the table side of things at the moment because they do need, like, they got some improvements, but it seems like they do still need some help. But I also don't think the situation is as dire as people act like. So, so that's complicated as well. But I don't really have a lot of first-hand experience to back that up. When people get too fatalistic about a faction in this game now, my knee-jerk reaction is to go, well, perhaps the issue is how you're approaching the problem.
Like it's the player, not the game.
I don't want to say it, but yeah, more or less. So that's and I don't have the experience firsthand to really say that is or is not the case, so I don't want to lean too hard on that. Their lore is cool enough, like they feel like a secondary character in the Hazlia saga as a collective.
Like, would they be the Lancer character? Like, if Hazlia's Goku, would they be Vegeta, or would they be like Ten Shinhan? I'm not gonna give them Yamcha. No one's that bad.
Oh, that was actually gonna be who's that? I think I'm thinking of the original, like not Dragon Ball Z, but the one before that. Because there was another guy, not Yamcha, but there was another guy who was just like a regular asshole who was in the mix for a really long time.
That'd be Dragon Ball. So there's Goku, Krillin.
Oh no, maybe I'm thinking.
Yeah, Yamcha. I think you are thinking about Yamcha because he did the Dragon Fang or Spirit or Wolf Fang attack where he basically just double clawed a person.
Yeah. I feel like they're essentially that role along with. So if the 100 Kingdoms are Goku in terms of importance to the lore, like the city states and the Sorcerer Kings are Yamcha and Krillin. Like they're just the 100 Kingdoms pals who are along for the ride.
Gotta go deal with the with Frieza. We're going to Namek.
Yeah, they're the Z Warriors or whatever the fuck.
Oh my god.
The Z Fighters. So it's like their aesthetic is cool enough. I guess I like the Greek thing more than I like the Roman thing, but you're really kind of just... I know history people are going to get mad at me for this, but you're really kind of just splitting hairs in a lot of ways with those two aesthetics. But I think their cavalry is extremely cool looking for reasons I don't fully understand even to myself. And that really makes the faction appealing to me. But they're bad on the table. Their lore is, in all truth, to me, kind of ho-hum. I'm feeling a D, if I'm being quite... And that's just because I don't want to capitulate to the community at large by putting them in F.
No, we have someone else for F. I agree with you on the D, to be honest. I think
they love the D.
Yeah, they love just like the Wadrin, just like Hard Mommy.
Mm-hmm.
City states. Playing it wise, they play very much a classic rank and file Bronze Age style game plan. There's a lot of factions and abilities and things that just outplay them. Do it better. Like there's the Hedgehog list in 100K that just kind of does better city states than what city states is. What really sucks for city states. I do think they have some interesting options, but their options are like they have too many anvils and not enough hammers. Yeah. And they don't have enough unique stuff. Like they're kind of getting unique stuff. Like chariots are really helping. Minotaurs are cool, but it's like a super hammer and just like a fast anvil. Inquisitors are kind of cool, but I think they're a little expensive and need a little bit more to justify their point cost. And then it's also like flavor of guy with shield for like a lot of their human based dudes.
Yeah, like, their aesthetic is very samey.
Like, God, I gotta pull up their names because I'm not Greek. And I don't remember their names. Leave. Browse faction. I'm just on my phone. Okay, Ogma, sword and shield guy. Hoplite, sword and shield guy. Phalanges. Sorry, Hoplites are spear and shield guy. Phalanges, big spear guy. Where are the Thorakites? Thorakites, sword and shield guy. Like, there's basically like 4 regiments of just Greek dude in armor with different tool in hand.
Yeah.
So,
which... Like, it's good that that's centered in one faction, I feel like, because that is a vibe for some people in and of itself. So, like, I understand why there is the appeal, but it does feel samey. They also, I'll say their monsters have the Nord problem of just being, like, it's just a giant guy. And you can say, oh, he's a statue with a god in it, but, like, okay, I don't know that just to look at it. I see a giant guy, and I start to fall asleep.
It gives me the reminder of, like, the, Colossus of Rowan? Or Thebes? What the fuck was that Colossus?
I just, you have Hydras and...
There's a lot of monsters from Greek mythology.
Demogorgons.
Yeah, like if they brought out a Gorgon regiment, Chimeras. They brought out the satyrs, what I do like for their goats. So there is like faction diversity in here for the regiments. I just don't... They kind of have one game plan, and that's it. Like that game plan
Yeah.
is slowly changing. I think Chariots are going to change that, but yeah, their baseline is not that great. I do, however, like their lore. How one of like I don't know if he was a wizard or like basically two guys. One guy had an idea and the other guy was like the supply officer. I think it was a wizard and basically a guy who had like supplies were like, wow, they predicted that the fall was coming and they're like, it's gonna happen around this time because Haziel's like chewing too much meth.
Been there.
His teeth are getting black. And so they started just like moving stuff to what would become the city states, and they realized like they figured out how gods work and how it's like you pray towards a god, the god generates power, we take the power and turn the streetlights on. Like they made that cycle so they had renewable energy. It's like kind of funny. And then they made 9 cities, but then they're like, well, if I die, my dream won't come out. But because like Haziel started the fall and did everything and started it too early, only one of the 9 cities actually functions how it's supposed to, and all the rest are like, the council is corrupt. The people killed the council and took over. The people killed the council, found the god, and then the god got released and took over. Like, it's various stages of one of these 3 basically fucking each other. While only one of them actually works the way it is, where the guy successfully cloned himself, had a council, and when one of the clones starts getting a little, like, too fuckety from being a clone, they just go over and kill the clone, and they make a new one who takes his spot until, it happens again, and that's how it runs. Like, that's the council. So, like, they do have an interesting lore, but I want to see more lore bits from them. I think they have a good origin story, but nothing really else besides that. Like, Old Dominion has so much more overarching and interacting with so many more communities that's really interesting. City States, does very much feel like the Krill and Yamcha of the Dragon Ball cast of, like, well, more like Yamcha, really, because it's just like, yeah, you're there. Sensu beam.
Yeah, or like the Blue Power Ranger. Like he's well, I don't even know if he actually did this now because my recollection of the original Power Rangers is become foggy through the mists of time. But like they're like the Donatello. Like they are mostly inventing things and providing gadgets, and they're not really the main ass kicking guys of the team.
Yeah.
The tricultural Ninja Turtles of the humans in EA.
Yeah. I agree with you on the D tier, though.
Yeah.
Where do you think the community... Oh, go ahead.
F. You got him in an F. I've seen those posts. Well, even just locally, like, people are like, I can't win with the city-states. And, sorry, I shouldn't have said that in that tone, so I apologize for that. But I don't think anybody from our city fucking listens to this podcast anyway, so fuck you anyway. JK!
Oh my god. Yeah, I would say the community is not super happy with them. Like, I think there's, like, argument to make to put them into D tier, to be honest. Like, there's some people who really like them, think they're cool and interesting, get some work out of them, but like overall, I do think the community doesn't value them very well.
No, so also I wanted to mention, I think it's more appropriate to say this now, even though I wanted to touch on it on the other tier list, but I think it was Ben that was saying that like
Competent Conquest Ben?
Yeah, Competent Conquest Ben.
Oh, okay.
I assume everybody just knows that when I say Ben, I mean that.
Another content creator.
Yeah. So he was saying like they're not terrible and they're not bad at what they do, but what they do is not flashy or engaging or necessarily like somebody's idea of a fun way to win a game.
Yeah, it kind of gets into, I want to say, a little bit of like the 100K problem of you're winning a game by little efficiencies throughout the game that cascade into a win. While other factions, especially like with Drune, Old Dominion, probably Spire, Spires has it there, will just like do a big play, fuck up your opponent, and that'll landslide you into a win. Dwagholm is people slam against your walls of your castle, and then you just shoot them off of your walls, and you're like, come at me, bro, and then they eventually just run out of stuff, which kind of its own sort of fun of like successfully defending a castle.
So I think that there's like, no matter what you claim your reasons for getting into war games are, on some level you want to see your little guys go in and kill the other person's little guys, and Dwagholm will do that. 100 Kingdoms, like, even if they're not the flashiest faction in the game, like if you get your Gilded Legion brick or your Household Guard with veterans to somebody's unit and they get their attacks off, like that's going to be a shitload of Clash 4 dice. Like, you're going to clear some space, even if they're not the most aggressive faction. Nords, if you're playing them right, like, you'll shred the other team and cut them up. Like, you'll lose a lot in the deal too, but you'll fuck them up and it'll still feel pretty good. But City States is like, they just take a hit good.
Yeah,
like, they hit back with massed attacks, but it's all like Clash 2.
Yeah, and that's really something that kind of hurt. Like, I don't know.
It sucks to have a low output army.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons. Like, early on, I'm more leaning towards relentless drills and off of veterans for 100k lately. But early on, I was much a big fan of veterans because, like, I would just roll shit and I would roll like 30 dice and 10 of them would be 4s, and if I was veterans, I would have hit.
Yeah,
kind of thing. Like, it's stuff like that where I'm like, ugh. While, like, City States being Clash 2 on a majority, like, especially if it's big bricks, just kind of sucks. Like, there's ways around it, there's ways to improve it, but it's just, It's just,
at the end of the day, yeah,
it's
like, in the current game state, being more defensive doesn't win you games.
Well, it's the thing, like, in actual weapons development, in real life, like, people would make a weapon that would kill someone, and then people would make defenses to protect themselves from that weapon, and then people would develop a stronger weapon, and people can always make something that's more and more and more destructive than you can build fortifications, armor, defenses comparatively. So people will always get in if they have that tool, kind of thing. And so it's kind of like, it exemplifies like a modern arms race in a minute, like in the game itself. Like, no matter how defensive City States is, there's always tools and weapons in factions to overcome that defense. What people will commit towards those defensive things, because, like, if you have a massive hoplite block, they're 4 wounds per stand, and if you have 8 of them, if you set a dedicated weapon in and wipe out 6 out of the 8 stands, they're really not coming back. You finish them off, and then you've now created this massive hole that you can just fill in and just rip apart your opponent. There's tons of stuff that just kind of chew through that, and that hoplite block kind of exemplifies putting a target on their back for being that defensive, and that people know they have to dedicate a very good hammer to get rid of them effectively.
Yeah.
So, like, it's just kind of written, and you don't really have to, like, it's something a lot of players can just kind of figure out really easily, as I think what I'm also trying to say.
Yeah.
All right. Sorcerer Kings. You talked about City States. I will talk about Sorcerer Kings. These guys, right off the bat, had a ton of problems. Thankfully, they fixed some of those problems. However, I still think they have a ton of problems. What really sucks for Sorcerer Kings. Lore-wise, they're a bit interesting. Like, they are a bunch of wizards who escaped the fall, ran out to sea, I think they made a land bridge and then raised up an island out of the sea, and they live there, and then they use their elemental powers to, like, aggregate the land so it's farmable, and, you know, make a civilization out of these wizard refugees. Their society is kind of interesting because it's basically a magic theocracy, so, like, the more magic you are, the higher you up in society. What's always interesting to see, like, a wizard's like faction or civilization that's ruled by wizards, because they're usually fucking out of their minds anyway. it's kind of like engineers in real life. If you ever interact with an engineer, they're absolutely nuts. Because to do that level of math and figure out all those things, you just go crazy. So I just assume it's the same thing with wizards and why they're all crazy.
That makes sense.
So they have this like magical hierarchy, and at one point, the entire the four sorcerer kings who are in charge of everything went off to the elemental planes, fucked around in the elemental planes, came back, realized everything was cray cray, fixed it, told people to stop being idiots, set up the current hierarchy. And then I think they just went. I'm not exactly sure. I think one of them sticks around now to like make sure it's all good or something. And they ran off basically back to their elemental planes for my abridged lore. So it's kind of interesting. There's a group of refugees that followed them, and they're kind of like the Steppes faction. So they're more Mongolian horse archer-esque, who are just running around shooting at them if they ever come out of their cities. Aesthetically, I'm not super pumped about them. They have kind of I'm not really sure. It's kind of like a more India aesthetic. Like what would you call that? Like is that Middle Eastern like Indian?
You know what? I don't feel like I have the expertise to really pin down all the cultural influences in any sort of coherent way that make up a lot of these factions, quite frankly. But especially the Sorcerer Kings, I feel like I'm out of my depth.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where it's so it's I like their aesthetic overall, but it doesn't specifically excite me. It's one of those things where the more fantastic elements are quite interesting, but the more grounded elements like
they remind me of like Middle Ages India, like the Raja, like I think they're called the Raja Corps. Like the Raja Corps are very much like what in like Indian people wore for that time and setting as armor when they got into a fight. Like that's what they wore. It's just them. It's like the men at arms. Like this is just a guy in armor from Middle Ages Europe. Like this, it's just the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing as the Dogs of War preview model for me. I think is an apt metaphor for it all. It's just like it's very hard for me to get excited about just some guy in leather armor. At the end of the day.
That's fair. Except it's hardened leather because he has hardened 1.
It's true. You got me there.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That technicality makes a tremendous difference. Yeah, I don't know. Like their aesthetic is overall fine. Like I'm kind of 50-50 honestly on some of the more fantastical elements. Like I like about I'd say 90% of the Rakshasa.
Yeah, I like their monsters as well. I also like their elementals. Like I more lean towards the fire ones. I think they're really cool, but the wind ones are also interesting, but not as cool.
See, I have the same opinion, but in reverse.
Okay, thank goodness.
And that's why we make such a great pair. But
I don't know. Each other.
Their aesthetic is fine. It doesn't do it for me, but I like that it's present in the setting. Like I think that's everybody says it, but that's not really an aesthetic and a style that gets a ton of representation in Western fantasy. So it's nice to see that there is that element of it.
I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad it's in the game as well.
Not everything has to be for me to be good. So there is that element of it. The elephants, were not as cool as I was hoping they would be. In all honesty, the smooth elephants do not necessarily do it for me, but I guess it depends on how the paint jobs look. But there's a lot of intriguing elements to their lore. Like I like the goals for just a basic ass chafe unit. I think they've got an interesting how they're sort of just like
weird elemental spawn that doesn't really fit in, but are in all a bunch of different elements. And they're like, here, just get out and be line troopers to die for us.
Yeah, well, I like that they're just sort of an incidental thing that they went into the elemental realms. Were just like, oh well. These things are.
Yeah. Look, can I take one home? We have enough goals at home. Goals at home. Yeah, I think my big problem lore wise is that it hasn't expanded enough. Like there isn't more. It's kind of similar to City States. Like I think actually City States origin is more interesting than Sorcerer King's origin. But I want to see the lore expanded more, so that we have more lore with this faction. their origin story's like pretty decent, but it's also similar to city states, except instead of making gods to fuel lights, they were like, let's just go do some drugs with the elemental plains people and just raise some islands off of the like in the ocean and stay over there.
Which, like, I get it. But...
Yeah, you know, like let's build a boathouse, guys. Them actually playing, I would have hard F tiered these guys before they got rid of Bloodlust. After, now that they got rid of Bloodlust, I still, you know what? I'm still kind of gonna slap them an F tier, to be honest. So the reason why is they have a lot of what's called Scornergy. This is a concept from War Machine where you have rules in your faction where it's like, this thing goes, it gives out a buff, but it wants the buff from another thing that hasn't gone yet, while the other thing wants to go and get the buff from that thing. Like, they need, like, they want each other's buffs, but they both don't want to go first, so it's kind of shitty there. Their ritual interaction has changed, and it's gotten a little better, but it forces everyone to play the Majha Raja to get rituals out. There's the Sadar. I don't think anyone's really going to be playing the Sadar. He's kind of just not. He's kind of like, he's in like Mimic Assassin territory, and no one wants to be a Mimic Assassin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I think the elementals themselves are cool. I think the wind, however, the range unit from the wind Jin is still bad. Like it's not worth it. It's too many points. Does that thing get updated? Windborn 190. Barrage 3, range 20, AP 1. Volley 2. Yeah, no, not worth it. Flamecasters are good. Like, there's a couple of good things in here, but also not a huge roster to pick from. Their monsters I also think are good, but they're... What are they? Aren't they all heavy? So now you're going, like, really heavy in list construction. You want to be out early. It just has some weird problems that stack up for it not being very effective to play. The vibes are off. Like I don't really like them because I don't think I think they need to go back into the oven and cook a little longer, to be honest.
That makes sense.
Like they're kind of sitting in a problem that Old Dominion was sitting in last year.
Well,
I think that's where they are. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like they are in a weird place balance-wise, and that was somewhat addressed, but there's still, I guess, work to be done there. Just based, yeah, I don't know. They're definitely in the lower side of things, like probably in the F tier right now, just because they do have a lot of kinks to work out.
And not the good kind.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's to work through. But I don't know. They'll get there, I'm sure. But right now, it's tough to make an argument for them. The vibes of their cool aesthetic do not carry them through the. You know, they have as you said, Scornergy with their stylistic versus their playstyle vibes. That doesn't really make sense, but I'm committing to it.
Well, no, their playstyle has Scornergy where it's like Flamecasters want to go, but they want the Sorcerer to go first to do a thing that makes them have more output. Sorcerer wants them to go first so that she has more output. Like, you're kind of in a catch-22 of like, well, get fucked.
I think generally speaking, like something that we can comment on more broadly is like rituals are having the same complex special rule growing pains that a lot of other factions are going through right now, like
Woodrune.
Yeah, like Woodrune, exactly. And to a lesser degree, like the strategic stack is not a bad mechanic by any means, but I think that it probably needs to be developed a little bit more, just in terms of figuring out things for city-states. But it's a good idea in theory. Like stack manipulation is certainly an important element of the game, and but I've never personally firsthand witnessed anyone do crazy plays with it, and I know that those are out there.
So. I think you need to go play Ben.
I don't think I'm good enough to play Ben.
Everyone's good enough to play Ben. It just, does Ben want to play you?
Well, I don't presume.
Send Ben 50 maple syrups and he will play you.
I'm not I would have to raid the reserve to get that kind of maple syrup together.
It's a lot of maple syrup, especially for Canadian.
And that's and honestly, if I'm gonna pay somebody to beat my ass, it's not. It's gonna be a different person.
There's other kinks I could explore.
Yeah. So we'll leave it at that. No offense to Ben, I think he's lovely. He's just not my type.
I hope Ben listens to this one. He'll be like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, this will be a weird postcast, especially because it'll be in 2 weeks and I'll have completely forgotten that I said this.
Man, I don't think it's gonna be in 2 weeks. I think like the next one to be out is on the 31st, so this will be out on the 14th.
Oh wow!
Recording on the 13th. This is gonna be the 14th of June.
Yeah, so I'll definitely have forgotten everything.
Yeah.
This will be great. Another living soul hears this. Yeah, this will be one that I'll be checking the comments for.
Yeah, so if you guys ever wonder why, if I say stuff, you're like, "Why does he remember that?" It's like this is how far out stuff is.
Yeah, that's why you can't hold me accountable for anything I say on this.
Yeah, my opinions can change within that time, but it's totally
they
fine.
Do.
It shows growth. Yeah, it shows growth.
That's the problem. Is like I remember there was that one. Well, I don't know if we're going too deep with this, but we had to redo a segment of one of the episodes, and I couldn't tell you what my original opinions were, so it was just like new opinions when we redid it.
I feel like that was the scenario.
It was one of the scenario episodes, yeah.
I think it was because we were up so late, and then I think some of it didn't record.
Yeah.
And then when we caught back up, we were only like one scenario. Like we didn't record one scenario, and it was like midnight, and then we redid the second half of it, or continued on for the second half and just recorded that one scenario opinions. So yeah. Okay.
Seeing how the hot dog's made there, but nonetheless.
So where do you think the community ranks Sorcerer Kings?
Well, they don't seem happy about it either, but
I don't really go in there, but from what I've seen, so I kind of read a little bit of Sorcerer Kings on the Parabellum Discord. Not super into it, but I know from the BonkTable Sorcerer Kings and talks I've had with people there's some interesting stuff. There's some fun things to do, but there's too much bookkeeping. Rituals aren't really that strong for the amount of stuff you're doing to get them off. The regiments themselves are in a better spot. But I would say this is a D tier, easy.
Yeah, that probably makes sense. People, I would say, the community at large, just to editorialize slightly, they're negative about stuff they should be positive about, and they're positive about stuff they should be negative about.
It's weird.
And, yeah. So, it's, I definitely think that there's probably more optimism for the faction right now, but it's also, more casual players, and I hate to say that, but also I've said it a few times now, so I guess it's just that's where we're at.
Yeah, but, maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll record, what is casual? What is competitive? What are those things? How do they, interact? Because that's a whole other topic. And for communities, I think it's good to have both.
Yeah.
And I think you also need both.
Yeah, definitely.
And you need to cater to both. They're not versus each other. They are two different aspects of the same thing that need to work together. And if you ever get into a versus point, you're going to have problems, but you can easily get both these things to work together and have good communities. This is a whole other topic.
Yeah.
We will not be going in tonight, but that's just my Coles note, my TLDR.
Yeah. That's legit, but yeah. So overall, yeah, I guess a D makes sense.
This is my OBS. This one. Can I half screen this too? No. There we go. Okay, so on the left is our vibe-based Conquest tier list. So S tier Spires, A tier 100k, Dwag Home. Is this? No. Fuck. I already fucked this up. Other way around. Get out of here. You go over here. I'm already fucking this up hard. You go over there. There.
I'm only seeing with a one window in mine.
Are you seeing? You're not seeing both? Oh.
Well, so because you're probably streaming a window to me, but I
oh, you're right. I totally am
capturing your whole desktop. Well, that's fine. I mean that it doesn't. Well, you didn't have to cut me off.
No, I'll just share my screen. There we go. Screen 1. Go live. There you go. Got both. You're in?
Yeah.
There's my OBS. Let's move that over there.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so on the left side, that's our customized Conquest faction vibe-based tier list ranking. Once again, this is just how we feel about the factions. This has no basis in any data. It's just what we've seen, how we feel, how things play. It combines how the faction is, from building it and things it has, to how it plays on the table, to its lore and aesthetic, and just overall. I like this. I like what we kind of come up with and what we've agreed upon here. Like Spires, Old Dominion. So Spires S, A tier Old Dominion, B 100k into Dwaycombe, C for Nords, D for Wadroon City States, and F for Sorcerer Kings.
Yeah, I co that.
On the what we think the Parabellum Discord thinks of each of the factions, I'm kind of in agreement as this as well, just by like what reading the Discord is like, how interacting with members of communities are, kind of all that stuff. Like Spires players are usually pretty good. They get into some weird fetishes sometimes, but they're usually really good about just the game itself.
But who amongst us doesn't?
I am not fetishizing Spires. All that kind of stuff. 100k Dwaycombe and Wadroon, I think a lot of people really like those. They're also really strong play-wise. Spires also really strong play-wise. B, yeah, I don't think there's nothing in B. Then we get a C tier with Old Dominion. Old Dominion has the problem that it's kind of like a seal clubbing faction. Like, it is strong, it's doing a lot of things, and is very good right now. But a lot of new players get kind of seal clubbed by Old Dominion very hard, and they do blame it on Resolve. Once you figure out how to beat Old Dominion, strongly recommend re-listening to the Old D problem. We tell you how to beat it in there. You'll do much better into it. D for Sorcerer Kings. I think that's acceptable. We've kind of talked about that one just lately. F tier, Nords and City States. I think City States kind of ends up here just because it is kind of a one-trick pony, as we've talked about.
Yeah, it's one deserves to be there and one doesn't.
Yeah. Nords, however, it's just it's sad. I just think
a PR problem.
Yeah, it really is just a PR problem. Like, Nords is not run forward and charge and melee people faction. It is very much be a wood elf, and a lot of players don't understand that. Like, we should probably do a Nords problem episode at some point. And just kind of discuss like what people find the problems are Nords with, what are actually good in Nords. Do the same thing we do with Dwaycombe and Old Dominion. I think Nords would, at this point, justify it more as like a public service announcement of like they are good. You just need to rethink how to play them, and you'll find be in a much better spot with them than just kind of running forward and dying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, I think we did good. And we did it under 2 hours.
Yep, this might be a record for us.
We just needed to have fun. That was it.
No. Damn, that's dark.
I think this is going to be
doing this for almost a year, and this is the first one that we enjoyed, everybody.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us today. BonkTable, we got a Discord. I've kind of mentioned it a couple times. You'll find a ton of other content creators who are posting their stuff. There's discussion about the game and, what's going on with it. And, maybe you'll find, as you can see, like a different opinion. We also have a YouTube channel. This will be up on the YouTube channel so people can see the tier list itself. I might edit this so that it says, I had to make an account and I was too lazy to, so whatever. I might edit this, I might not. Depends on how lazy I am.
Who wants to give their private information to Big Tier Maker?
Yeah, Big Tier Maker. Big Dino. So there's lots of bow reports on that. There's also other bits of content. I'm kind of doing a series of playing video games and talking to other high-end players about factions while we play video games. So that's been kind of fun. We got Dweghome and the Spires one should be out. So Dweghome, I'm getting beaten Elden Ring. Spires, playing Total War Warhammer 3. Great time.
And yet you won't do a Fortnite episode with me.
Fucking no. I have to own the game, and I don't own Fortnite.
Well, it's free.
I still don't own it.
That could easily be remedied, and then I could show everybody my collection of rare Jonesies.
Oh God. I think we need to end this. So yeah. Cassandra has Twitter. So show your rare Jonesies on Twitter to people who follow you.
I prefer to do it in a way that you don't enjoy.
God damn it.
But yeah, I'm BonkTable Cass. I post intermittently. It's that's all I have to say. I'll post more if I have more of a reason to.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for listening and watching.
Yep. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.